Hey everyone, welcome to Comic-Con at Home 2020. It's what a strange year, and this is a very unusual way to do a comic book convention, but you know, it's kind of working for us in this special time when we all need to be home. I'm in my studio for the first time ever for a Comic-Con. I've been going to the convention center since 1994, so without missing a year. So I'm glad to be part of this with a virtual panel. So, you know, we adapt, and next year is going to be great, be better. We'll get back to what we're all used to, I'm sure. So looking forward to it. I hope you guys are being safe, and I hope you're healthy, and your families, all that. So my heart is out to you. I've made a little list of things here. Usually this is sitting on the table at the convention panel that I kind of go off of, or I usually have somebody feeding me questions. So I kind of wrote down some of the questions that I've been hearing this year, but first I wanted to just kind of go over what I've been doing in 2020. If you've been following me on social media, you know that I've tried to stay active and keep you guys abreast on what I'm working on that week, what is due, what is finished, what's coming. But not everybody, you know, gets on social media, so this is a good time for everybody else to kind of catch up, I guess. I think that one of the things that's been a side effect of the COVID year, 2020, is that being at home, I've been able to get a lot of work done. You know, I'm not breaking up my deadline scheduling with travel or anything like that. I just was here the whole year. So I got a lot of stuff done, and I'm really happy to share that with you. Probably number one was I got 5 years done. So the 5-year panel, we should have a 5 years panel. I got it, it was 10 issues long, the entire story, and just as issue 10 was supposed to be at the printer, the COVID isolation rules hit and everything shut down, and the Diamond distributor said, we're going to take a break. So rather than wait, you know, 2 or 3 months for readers to read the final chapter of this, you know, suspense story, we went ahead and did this COVID cover where I redid issue 1, put masks on everybody, and we called it the COVID edition. And it went out to our subscribers. And in all fairness, I offered it to any retailer that wanted to order it at wholesale. They could direct from us, and some did. So some of you got this through your retailer. It was available for order online if you wanted it, but mostly it was for the subscribers who, you know, faithfully read it on schedule. So they didn't have to wait, you know, 4 months to find out what happened. Now, by the time this panel comes on, this issue will have already hit the stores, and this is the retail issue. There you go, you can see it a little better. And this has come out through Diamond Comics into the stores, and now that we're all open, the minute Diamond reopened, the minute the stores could take Diamond books, this thing was in the pipeline. So that's good. Right on its heels, this is the first trade, but you know, the second trade is right on its heels. This collects 1 through 5. The second trade collecting called Stalemate collects 6 through 10. And then everybody was asking, are you going to do a omnibus? Yes, we will. I never promote the omnibus when the series first starts because you know, people say, oh, okay, well, I'll wait for the omnibus, which means I don't see them for a year. So, and I miss you. I want you to read the singles. The people who buy the singles keep the series alive, of course, the sales. And then the people who trade wait, at least I get to see you twice a year. But the people who wait for the omnibus, I only see you once a year, or when I finish a book, which is actually, you know, the way the book world is supposed to work. But it sure is nice to sell them a chapter at a time too. It keeps the book going. Anyway, you know that story very well. If you know anything about comics, you know all about singles versus trades versus omnibus. Anyway, we are going to have an omnibus. Somebody was asking, are you going to do a special Abstract Studio one, like it's all black or something like we did with Rachel Rising? We're definitely going to do we always do two versions. We do an Abstract Studio version that you can only get off our website, and it'll have like a print in it and, you know, a signature. And then there's the retail version that's made by the thousands, and it goes out through the distributors, and that's the one, you know, you'll find in the store easily, I hope. So, yeah, 5 years. You'll notice the big thing about 5 years was that it used all my characters. So if you had read any of my books, you saw those characters kind of interacting together like one great big music festival. That's the closest I can think of. All my worlds collided. Each book that I have made has a different, almost a bit different genre, you know, but they have a common thread of, there's usually a Strangers in Paradise character in each one of those books that I've made. And I'm thinking of Strangers in Paradise, Rachel Rising, Echo, Motor Girl, Strangers in Paradise 25, and then 5 years. Those are the different series that I've done. So yeah, that's the core cast, and you know, if you've read the books, you know them. So books aside, what I'm doing next, now that this is over, is I'm working on, I'm updating how to draw. I have had this book out since 2012. And it's 5 chapters, 128 pages, and it was a book that was all sharing about how I draw, my style, and what I look for in my drawings, what I've learned through my life of cartooning, in terms of like expressions and action and flow. And in the end of it, I even shared all my tips and tools and my templates. So the more practical stuff for the new artist, besides the how to draw lessons, is, you know, I showed you how I get this, you know, paper from the art store, and then I trim it and I do my own page template, and I lightbox every new page off of this. And in here are my templates. So it's how I rule out a page. It's how I use a lettering guide, because I still letter by hand with you know, these good old micron pens, just like a manga artist. So yeah, I share all that in here. So, but this is from 2012, and it really needed updating. So I've decided to add extra chapters on the chapters that are in here now. Let's see. How I draw women, which is kind of what I do. Expressions, how to draw beautiful, which gets into symmetry, what is pretty, you know, what do we look for as human beings, what are we naturally attracted to instinctively, not just people, but, you know, anything, and anything organic. How to draw funny comics, how to inject humor into a comic. I know that sounds like you can't teach somebody to be funny, but you can teach somebody how to draw funny, and that's what the focus is. And then, of course, the template thing. So I wanted to expand it, and the new chapters are body language and how do you do layouts for timing. Like if you're going to have a punchline panel, I learned in high school, it's funnier if you set it up. And the more setup you got, the funnier the punchline got. The new book, here's a dummy for the new book. The old one is 120, the new one is 160 pages. And whereas the old one is a typical trade paperback that, you know, sits like that, the new one is a lay flat, like a textbook. Now that's usable. Now you can lay it on your desk and, you know, it's not going to fold up on you. So I like that a lot. This is what I have to feel. There's 160 pages. I have to feel this. This is the new How to Draw book. The other thing that I have been doing since I finished 5 years was the Art Nouveau Portfolio. This was something that we've been wanting to do a long time, Robin and I. We had been wanting to do a series of illustrations that we could put in one folder and call it, the Art Nouveau Portfolio. I like to draw that style. I've done a bunch of covers in that way. So what I've come up with was, you get this folder, and it has, these are cover sheets on the folder. So the front cover sheet is like that, and then the back cover sheet has the panels of the illustrations on it. And they're just to protect it while it's in transit to you, or it's in its packaging. Let's put that right there. So you put these cover sheets aside, and you get this folder, and you open it up just like a real big school folder. It's 11 by 17, the same size as the illustrations. And then you have this little tab holding these illustrations. Take that out, and what I have is 6 very detailed Art Nouveau drawings that I did of Francine and Couture. The theme is moon and sun. So there's panels with Couture and the moon, and then Couture and the sun, and then Couture and Francine and with the sun, and then the same with Francine. Francine and the sun, Francine and the moon. This is Francine Moon. There's tons of detail in here that, like for instance, at the bottom, there's the little moon maids down there. So there's just lots to look at. I think the thing you want to have with these is just to be able to stare at them for a while and always find something, see something today you didn't see yesterday in the drawing. So I spent about 3 days on each drawing, just letting my imagination have a good time. That was good. It was a good therapy, especially in this year. And I think I have one more to show you. This is Francine Sun. With the little, everything, all these little details down in here. There's probably a whole little hobbit world in there. I know in a couple of them at the bottom where all the foliage is, I hid little mushroom worlds, with mice and stuff. Anyway, so, man, I had a good time drawing this. I really love drawing Art Nouveau. It's a really peaceful thing to do with your time. It takes a long time because you just sit there and just, draw lilies all day. That's therapy. That's good therapy when you don't dare turn on the TV because it's all bad news. So, yeah, this is how I got through 2020. I hope that it'll be something that you can enjoy on the same level. That something nice in the year that you can look at and get a little peace from. It was made with the right frame of mind, that's for sure. So anyway, this guy is on our website. It's available. That was a really nice couple of weeks that I spent working on that. And then one last thing, there's a sketchbook. There's a sketchbook for every year, right? Almost. I think there's 1 or 2 missing. But the 2020 sketchbook is still out there available. And it's just some of the various fun sketches that I've done. You can't see any of this. There's some more Art Nouveau that's not in these. But here's what my sketchbooks look like. Is that really one? Yeah, I drew Wonder Woman. See, when you do these little sketchbooks, you can draw these other characters that I can't publish. But now this is technically my sketchbook is fan art. So yeah, I can draw Xena or Wonder Woman or my characters doing weird things. Fun. That's just, you just do this for fun. Back cover. So that's what I'm showing you all this because this is what I've been doing for, the year. And I think that was it for the books. So, That's what I've been publishing this year. I guess the obvious question is, what's next? Right now, we're going through ideas. So I want to do, of course, I always want to launch right into the next comic book series, but we're also discussing more of a young adult book, an illustrated chapter book or something, so that we're actually very open-minded right now about what we do next. So I'm looking forward to that. It could be a very exciting second half of the year for us. What is the difference between writing and drawing for yourself versus other publishers? There's a big difference. When I write and draw for myself, I'm thinking about what fits me, right? So what scenes and what's in my imagination, what kind of story do I want to chase and nail down, and what do I want to draw? Maybe I feel like drawing, like in 5 years, I spent half the book in Moscow. I felt like drawing, kind of a spy thriller where things happened in Russia and US at the same time. That was just me. And then sometimes I feel like drawing, everybody's on the beach or everybody's in the mountains or it's snowing, everything is covered in snow. I get to custom fit the story to my mood or where I think the story should go. That's not the case if you work with a team and you're working on an iconic character for a big publisher and there's a lot riding on it. There are more group decisions on what should happen with character, where we're going, and they're based on a lot of important things that have nothing to do with you as the writer or the artist. There may be a much bigger picture for Captain Airhead or somebody. Maybe there's a big push coming and they just need you to set it up. Or the big push has happened and they need you to follow through. So maybe Captain Airhead is all about living in the Himalayas. You need to write about the Himalayas. You can't say, first thing I'm going to do is get Captain Airhead over here to the beach in Hawaii, because I like that. No, you can't do that. So yeah, you need to join the team, have the team spirit, run the plays that the coach sends you. There's always a coach for these big iconic books. There's somebody overseeing the big picture. You do your part. And then if you're the artist, you of course bring your style. And as the writer, you bring your ideas. What if in the Himalayas, what if this happens? What if we have this great new challenge? What if we have this turn of events in the love story or whatever? That's what they want from you. Like, here's our setup. What would you do with it? Like if we laid out all these vegetables on the kitchen counter, what would you make? They own the vegetables. You come up with a recipe, but it has to be vegan or something, or it has to be, So those are the boundaries. They want you to run free within some certain boundaries, and then see what they want. And they got you in the first place because you're a good runner. You have good ideas. You write good dialogue. You have good story twists. That's why you're there. And if you're the artist, then whereas I draw for myself in terms of like, maybe I only want to draw medium close-ups for 3 pages in order to focus on the emotional impact, which is really not much different than a soap opera on TV, right? I mean, everything's medium close-up because like, oh. So, but Captain Airhead doesn't do that. Captain Airhead is action. Captain Airhead is power. So we need to be seeing more of the presence this person has in the room, even if it's waist up, the bulk shots and just that energy radiating off this magnificent person who's so different from everybody else on the planet. You see what I mean? It's different. You have to look at it different, write it different. When I self-publish, I'm very self-indulgent with my ideas and what I want to draw. When I was doing DC and Marvel work, the little bit that I did, I tried to play on their team. It's like joining a football team, and you try to be as good as you can on that team, baseball team, whatever. That's the most general way I can put it. Everything else is details and stories about, hey, one time, but that's a long conversation, and we have to have that at BarCon. Let's go to the next question. Why are there so many art forms in Strangers in Paradise? If you haven't read Strangers in Paradise, it is a long book. It's 2,400 pages, which ended up being 107 comics, 19 trade paperbacks, 8 hardcovers, a 2-volume omnibus. That's a big story. I did it for 10 years. Well, if you look at it, even just flip through Strangers in Paradise, every page looks different. I like that. But I infused all of my poetry, my music, my lyrics. I actually have notated music out in there. There's a lot of prose. I just touched my face, which I would never do at a convention center. That's where we are. There's a lot of prose in Strangers in Paradise, and my wife and Harlan Ellison told me there's too much prose. But there is there, because I wanted to have a scene and an issue, and if I drew it, it would take 7 pages. If I wrote it in prose, it would take 2 pages. And I wanted that story movement in that issue. So I did things like that. Plus, I always wanted to be able to have a book in my future, a novel. And I wanted people to get used to my writing, or I was trying it. I was learning on people, learning on my public. So I introduced prose, thinking, look, I can write. If I put out a book, please buy it, or don't laugh. I just laughed it. But anyway, so I put everything, all my ideas in there. And there is a story about it. When I was a musician, or a young musician, and wanted to be a singer-songwriter, I had a demo tape with 10 songs on it. Yes, it was a tape. It was a long time ago, cassette tape. And so I went to a guy who had a music studio and was kind of producing local bands, and he played it. And he played like the first minute of each song and then stopped. And he said, he had that teacher face. He said, you have one good idea in each song. So each song is just, okay, with one good idea. Why don't you take all those ideas and make one really good song, one great song? Well, that was my music critique. Cut to 15 years later, and I start my comic book career, and those words were still ringing in my head, searing in my ears. Take all your ideas and throw them in one basket. You've got one chance. So it's not like I have 10 different comics to try to win you over to keep reading me. I approach it like I have only one comic book issue. This is the one issue you happen to pick up. It better have everything I know I can do in there. So you can pick up an issue of Stranger in Paradise and it can have 3 different mediums in there. I was just like, if I thought of a song that I thought was good, I put it in there, a poem or whatever, This Mask I Wear, or, the prose of the detective aspect of the story. I put it all in there because I have one chance, to get a reader to try the next one, try a second one. So I don't know if that's good advice for you as creators, or whatever it is you're making an effort at, if you're trying to open up a shop or something and you want it to be a specialty thing, or you want to do a comic that specializes only in cosmic surfing or something. Don't forget to, sweeten the pot. Use your best ideas when you get a chance. Don't hold them back, because you may not get your second chance. That was my fear all through Strangers in Paradise. Okay, another question is, do you approach each of your series the same or differently? So I guess, we're talking about, I told you that Strangers is, it's hard to describe, but it's sort of a romance, slice of life with a lot of other stuff. Kind of like normal life with really abnormal things happening. Then there was Echo, which is really sci-fi. And then there was Rachel Rising, which is definitely horror. And then there was Motor Girl, which is kind of a poignant story about a veteran with PTSD. And then there was Stranger in Paradise 25, which kind of started bringing people together into one bigger story that had kind of a global intrigue. And then 5 Years, which is totally global intrigue. Somebody's trying to build the last, people are trying to build the last bomb, and our crew is trying to stop it. By the last bomb, I mean if they test this, we're done. So that was the basic story of 5 Years. Yes, I approached each story differently, you know. When I finished Strangers, because I had used all my ideas at the time, I was burned out, you know, I was empty. That's it, I've got all my ideas out of me. And it took me 9 months to recharge. And when I recharged, I thought, what do I want to do now? You know, what story do I want to devote myself to? And I decided I wanted to start with focusing on one single person, the main character in the story, who is Julie, and then have things just keep coming at Julie, and the story grows from this one person. So it was a different approach from I have an ensemble cast who live in one town and they keep bouncing off each other, you know, relationship. This focused on one girl who is when we meet her, she's a loser. By the end of the story, she's not. So it's the transition under extraordinary circumstances. I did approach that very differently. You know, it's a different mindset. Then when I did the Rachel Rising story, I really decided that using everything subliminal that I could would be a good idea. Like if we were going to make a metal album, you would put a lot of stuff deep in the mix, right? You've got the stuff at the top that you hear, even if the volume is down low. But if you turn the volume up and you start listening to the mix layers, like when they mix the album, they mix what you hear in the front. There's all these steps in the middle, and then there's stuff that sounds way back there or over here or over there. That's in the mix, right? So when I was doing the story, I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to get things in the mix where you're focusing on this one woman with a very strange problem, you know, a horrible problem. And then there's all these other stories that are happening behind her. You know, there's this 10-year-old serial killer. And then there's this lady who, you know, claims to be the first woman ever made. There's, you know, this guy who works in the morgue. Is he a creepy guy or is he a hero? These things are in the 3D layered mix, the mix of the room, the 3D room. I started thinking like that. And then because I'd drawn the first 2 books with a brush, going for this beautiful Art Nouveau, organic, feminine look to the stories because I'm focusing on women, I switched to a pen, you know, like a dip pen. And dip pens make these more straight lines because I wanted the art to be more frenetic, you know, more like Kafka. Less like Mucha, more like Kafka. And I wanted the visuals to make you nervous, you know. So that's me believing in subliminal mix, subliminal advertising, hidden images, nervous energies, just nervous energy. You know, so that was my approach, and I drew that way. I did it that way for like 3 or 4 years. It was really a great way to get all that out of me, you know. I knew it was time to finish and wrap up that horror series when I was flying back from a San Diego Comic-Con, that near the end of the series. And I was walking down the aisle to the restroom. This is back when we all used to get on planes. I was walking down the aisle to the restroom, and I saw a guy on the aisle seat. His head was back, and he was asleep, like that. And flashed through my head. I thought, it's not long until, you know, it's a very short time in your life until you're going to be dead. And somebody's going to have to close that mouth for your viewing in your coffin. And I know the stitch to close the mouth, the stitch inside the lips that closes the mouth to keep it from popping open during your viewing. And that was the first thing that came into my mind. And I thought, Oh, I think I've looked at this world long enough, the dark side long enough. I need a break. I think I'm ready to wrap this up. So within a few months, I had, wrapped it up. And then after that, I went into something that looks totally different, Motor Girl, where it starts off cartoony, and then it becomes, you realize it's more like Wizard of Oz. These cartoon characters are all representing aspects that are very deep and personal to the main character, to Dorothy. And my Dorothy was Samantha, Sam, who is a veteran with PTSD. So you think you're looking at, a cute story in the beginning, and you quickly realize that everything represents something, and it just pulls you in. And for that, drawing the cartoony characters was harking back to my old days when I just drew comic strips before comic books. That was a lot of fun for me to make use of that again, and to bring it forward and do it to the best of my ability inside this format that I now really try to be my best at, comic books. So I just did my best on that as a cartoonist and tried to write a story that meant something. So yeah, you see how each one I kind of like change a gear in my head and approach it in a different way. I think that helps. Just touched my face again, didn't I? See, if I was at a Comic-Con, there's no way I'm going home without the crud or the whatever is going around. You can't do that. When you're at a Comic-Con, you're so aware to never touch your face. You shake hands. Say for instance, you shake hands with Neil Adams, which I did at C2E2 this year. Well, Neil Adams, he went around the hall and shook everybody. Everybody wants to shake Neil Adams' hand. So if you shake Neil Adams' hands, you've just shook hands with everybody at the convention. And then he walks up, bye Neil, I'll see you later. And then you just do like this. Okay, well, you just now put everybody in the convention, whatever's on their hand, up your nose. So you learn at a convention, and no touch zone, until you go wash your hands and then you go to lunch or whatever, like that, or you Purell or whatever. It's just basic survival. So when the COVID stuff started, we were all thinking, okay, yeah, we know what to do. All the artists are thinking, okay, yeah, we know what to do. We've got our Purell. We don't touch our face already unless we're at home. So anyway, enough of that. I have 37 minutes so far. I think about 30-something minutes on the panel. So I have time for a couple of more questions. I'm going to try to keep it at panel length at 45 minutes. And I'm kind of watching the timer on the iPhone there. So, okay, I'm mentioning my books here, and notice they each have primary female characters. So one of the questions I get, and it's a very fair question, why do your stories focus on female characters? And you know what? I'm kind of happy to say that the reason I continue to do it is the same reason I started years ago. When I went through the 90s and the late 80s and the 90s as a cartoonist and trying to come up with stories and ideas, I became aware that there was a lot of anger in the female community with how they were being treated. We were getting a lot more comedy stand-up on cable TV, and MTV stuff was coming out and all that, and the music videos were, and I remember this one music video with Chicago, who is a band I really don't listen to, but they had a music video, and the entire music video was angry women, angry at the men and what they had done. And there were like a lot of different women. Every one of them was smashing something and all this, and it wasn't like control yourself. It was more like, wow, it worked. It was like you believed it. You were with them. You could tell that there was pain and they were hurting, and it was just so poignant. I don't even remember the song, But I remember those visuals, all those angry women, and the stand-up comedians that I was hearing, and they would just have these dialogues about what it was like from their side to go on a first date, second date, to be married, to go into labor, and what the husband is doing about it, and all how to raise the kids, and the husband's gone all day. Suddenly I was hearing it, it's all I could hear. Once you hear it, you can't not hear it. And it changed my thinking in terms of stories as a cartoonist. My stories went from frivolous serendipity ideas to female-centric characters. That there was one character who had a chip on her shoulder, and she was sarcastic but really cute about it. And this was my Kachu prototype, in my cartooning. And then there was another character who was enduring all this and had not broken through with being able to express her frustration yet, but she was enduring it, all that. And that was my Francine prototype character. And I had these two characters start showing up in my cartooning, my comic strips, and they would bounce off each other. Well, after several years of that, I started Strangers in Paradise, the comic book. When it was time for me to try a comic book, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay with these two core characters and flesh it out. Like, okay, they live on the cul-de-sac. What is Francine's dating life like? How does her roommate, Kachu, what does she think about that with Francine and her boyfriend, Freddie, who is a real tool? And boy, once I just started that, it just took off. To this day, all my stories have been female-centric because I just turned into such a... I just wanted to keep showing that, what it's like to live on a planet of predators or people who are oblivious to what you're going through. And I have a unique way of looking at it because I'm over here on this side, and then I'm looking at that side. I'm looking at that side. And then I get in the middle, and I'm like David. There's a character in Strangers in Paradise, David, and he's kind of like Switzerland. He's the only guy that's ever allowed in the room when these two are sparking. And he's kind of our avatar, how we stay in the room and hear conversations between Francine and Kachu, these polar opposites on classic female role in society versus the new view in society. So as they were doing their thing, there was David, and David was a non-threat. And I've tried to go through the last few years as a non-threat, just taking information and putting it back into my stories. And so, my stories are not for everyone, and I realize that. Not all kinds of guys want to read my stories, but I think that there are plenty of guys who do. And I think I try to write stories that matter, that make a difference. And I think that as long as you write from the inside out, you write of a human being first, and then that human being decides the gender. Here's how I want to walk through life. And I've always tried to, write that way, present that. We're human beings. So here's a human being who is struggling to understand, why is everybody so dumb? Why are they being so mean? And here's a human being going, maybe we just need to hug it out. Those are basically what my Francine and Kachu human beings are doing. And they're, win, fail, win, fail, win, fail, win, fail, win, fail, win, one, fail. That's the story, and how they work their way together and become a more not a compromise, but if you take these two and put them together, you come up with a more viable solution. Your solutions are not going to be found on the two opposite poles. The solution is global. So that's big, heady stuff, but you're getting into my Freudian psychology stuff of why I do this, and I hope I'm doing it for the right reasons. When I was 15, I just liked to draw girls, but now I'm older and I feel a responsibility to leave stories in my wake when I'm no longer able to make stories. I want to look at the stories and feel like they're still useful to society, that they didn't just capture the hedonism of the 80s or the whatever the style of the 90s or the zeros, or, as long as you write about human beings, it's timeless. So that's what you find in the classic stories that are still around 100 years later. I checked into the Hershey Hotel in Hershey, Pennsylvania one time, and it's an old hotel, old building. And when you go into the room, the room was decorated with there were some old books on the fireplace, and they were like from the 40s. And each one I picked up and thumbed through it, and I had never heard of the title or the author, and of any of these like 6 books. I mean, they were dead books. And I kind of read the first chapter of each one of those books, and it was just totally nailing its decade. What was popular in 1945 and never going to be popular in 1950 and beyond. You know what I mean? Like they were written as if they were magazine essays for that year, and that taught me a lesson. That's why my characters dress generic. You don't want them in 10 years looking like they're wearing bell bottoms or dressed like the 90s with shoulder pads or whatever. You don't want your characters to age out of society. You don't want to date your stuff. It'll look silly. What we think looks so great today, in 5 years you're going to be embarrassed at the pictures of how you're dressed. It's just the way it is. So when you draw your books, you have to be careful. Don't nail them too tightly to be, it's so goth and it's so cool looking with all the chains and everything else going on. Well, in 5 years, people, Generation Z is going to laugh at that. So if you want Generation Z to read your book when they hit 35, be careful. Be more like global. Think global. Don't be so trendy. Things like that. Okay, I can rant and ramble all day long about making comics, and it's mostly just because I've spent my life doing it now. I love it. I hope that I can continue to make comics for years and years to come, because the ideas just keep happening. So as long as I've got this guy going and this guy going, I'll keep trying to make comics. And thank you so much for reading my books. Thank you for keeping me on your radar, because there's a lot of stuff on your radar. I'm very happy to be on your bookshelf. I'm very proud to be in your home. If you have my books, thank you. Please follow us on social media, me and Robin, and stay in touch, because that's where we're putting all the news updates. I hope that you're enjoying your San Diego Comic-Con at home, and stay safe and healthy and eat snacks, and you can have a martini right in the middle of Comic-Con, which is something you couldn't do before, right? So find new ways to enjoy it, and hopefully next year we will all be face to face, and I would love to shake your hand. I'm still not going to put it right on my face again, but I would love to shake your hand and hug you, and the people that I usually see every year, I miss you. So yeah, you know who you are. So look forward to seeing you soon, and have a good Comic-Con. Thanks.